Galactic year 9023, Galactic Concord Summit, orbiting the jewel throne of the Imperium of Zythar. Human diplomatic representative, Tobias Vance. And with this treaty, may peace forever blossom between our worlds. The words hung like fragrant smoke in the air, meticulously sculpted and utterly devoid of flaws. Archon Dralvor, the towering, ten-eyed supreme chancellor of the Zythar Imperium, stood motionless beneath a vault of prismatic light. His flowing crimson robes rippled in the absence of wind, carried instead by the subtle flexing of graviton anchors embedded in the floor. Around him, dozens of alien envoys, each stranger than the last, stood in expectant silence. Their appearances were a masterclass in the universe's creativity. The Resarians gleamed with living glass skin, refracting thoughts as patterns of color. The Venkor wore chitinous armor that pulsed like heartbeats. Even the unsettling Vorgul floated nearby, veiled in psionic mist, whispering through a translator drone that made even compliments sound like death threats. And yet, amidst this theater of intergalactic regality, stood a singularly unimpressive figure. Tobias Vance, humanity's ambassador. A middle-aged man in a crisply pressed navy suit, hair thinning at the crown, and eyes darting nervously as though afraid of missing some obscure galactic protocol that might result in Earth's sudden vaporization. Despite the stakes, Tobias couldn't help but feel the creeping pressure of indigestion. The triple cheese protein bar, hastily wolfed down in Earth's pre-meeting prep room, now sat like molten lead in his stomach. "It's just nerves," he told himself. "Get through this. Smile, shake hands, or tentacles, or whatever appendages they offer. Then go home." Summoning his courage, Tobias rose slowly from his obsidian chair, cleared his throat politely, and extended a hand in the universal gesture of goodwill. That's what happened. A noise, entirely unsanctioned by protocol, thundered through the chamber. Beep-boop. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't ignorable. It was, to put it simply, catastrophic. The reverberation hung in air for what seemed like hours, bouncing off the crystalline architecture like a sonic weapon of war. Everything stopped. Breath, motion, thought. The 10 eyes of Archon Dralvor widened incrementally, each iris dilating with algorithmic precision. The ambassador from the Resarians dropped its color entirely, turning a deathly gray. The Venkor clacked their mandibles in horrified disbelief. And then came the whispers. He did it. He issued the Gorvalic. No, that's impossible. They wouldn't dare. By the ancient accords, that's a death mark. A blood insult. Tobias, mortified beyond words, blinked rapidly and stammered. Pardon me? Excuse me. That was, involuntary. His translator, AI, instantly converted the words into Galactic Standard. Unfortunately, Zytharian syntax nuances were notoriously complex. What they heard was, "I release this sonic challenge freely, unafraid of death." Archon Dralvor took a slow, deliberate step forward, his shadow stretching unnaturally as the light bent around his impossibly regal figure. "You challenge us?" he intoned, voice now devoid of the earlier honeyed diplomacy. "And no, I don't." His defiance is absolute, declared the Vorgul emissary solemnly. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed. Others fled. The more militant among them immediately began issuing orders into neural implants. War. War was declared over a burp. Tobias stood there paralyzed. He could feel his stomach twist again, hopefully not preparing another sonic assault, and whispered, "Oh no, Earth's so screwed." The emergency meeting was called before Tobias even left Zytharian orbit. In Earth Command, an underground installation beneath what was once Reykjavik, chosen for its neutrality and surprisingly good seafood, the crisis war room buzzed with furious activity. Projected holoscreens displayed red warnings across every alien alliance profile. Imperium status, hostile, declared cause, insult of highest order, Gorvalic. Expected response, extinction protocols initiated. At the table where the sharpest minds humanity could assemble on zero notice. General Han Li, Supreme Military Commander, nickname, the Smiling Guillotine. UN Director Rosa Iqbal, who hadn't slept in 42 hours but still had perfect eyeliner. Helena Voss, Earth's most ruthless PR strategist, infamous for turning a disastrous Mars terraforming mishap into the viral red, is the new green tourism campaign. Dr. Yuri Amelkov, xenolinguist and part-time podcaster on Galactic Gossip, Talking Tentacles. Helena slammed her palms on the table, nearly shattering the holographic projection. This is a PR disaster of universal magnitude. They think burping is like murdering someone's grandmother in public. Director Iqbal grimaced. Can we tell them it's a mistake? Dr. Amelkov shook his head vigorously. No use. Ziotharian culture is rigid. They view bodily control as supreme discipline. Burping is their literal Gorvalic, a dual invitation steeped in tradition. Backpedaling will be seen as cowardice and deceit. So we fight them? General Li asked, already drawing up contingency plans labeled Operation Regretful Apocalypse. No, Helena whispered. Her eyes glowed the dangerous glow of a marketing genius seizing a nightmare as an opportunity. We don't deny it, we own it. The room fell silent. Explain, Iqbal said slowly. Helena leaned forward, voice almost reverent. What if burping is our ancient rite? A sacred ritual of strength and defiance? What if, from the Ziotharian perspective, we are so fearless that we burp casually, even in diplomacy? It would terrify them, respect us, maybe even worship us. General Li frowned. That's insane. Helena smiled predatorily. Exactly. And insane is very human. The plan, hastily named Operation Echo of the Ancients, was greenlit within minutes. Over the next 2 Earth days, the greatest propaganda machine humanity ever assembled spun into overdrive. Fake archives were uploaded overnight. Ancient burping masters of Kyoto, entirely AI-generated with deepfake monks and serene mountain temples. Burping Through the Ages, a documentary narrated by a simulated David Attenborough detailing how warrior clans used burps to signify bravery before battle. Burpography, the symphony of the stomach, featuring orchestral performances mixed with strategic belches, claiming to date back to 4th century BC. Human influencers were paid astronomical sums to make viral reaction videos. When you realize Earth invented burping as diplomacy, by the 48-hour mark, Earth's cultural narrative had shifted galactically, from primitive apes with poor manners to the bringers of chaotic breath, masters of controlled insolence, fearless children of the roaring gut. As Tobias Vance's diplomatic vessel approached the jewel throne once again, this time flanked by the Grand Burp Master of Earth, a professional esports caster named Jeff Gutshot Malone, renowned for his belch vocabulary mid-tournaments, the fate of humanity teetered precariously. Jeff, Tobias asked nervously as the ship docked. You ready? Jeff cracked his neck and chugged a specially formulated soda known as Solar Surge 9X, banned on 3 planets for its explosive carbonation. He exhaled deeply, eyes glowing with bravado. Bro, I've been waiting my whole life for burping to mean something. The bay doors slid open. The galaxy awaited. The return to the jewel throne of the Zythar Imperium was a surreal spectacle unlike anything Tobias Vance had imagined. No longer was he entering as a solitary and nervous human negotiator. This time, he arrived as an emissary of legend. The docking bay itself had changed. Once austere and silent, it now thrummed with cautious curiosity. Alien dignitaries, many of whom had fled the chamber days earlier, now gathered in controlled clusters, whispering fervently behind luminescent veils and digital masks. They had reviewed the footage. They had studied the hastily seeded ancient human traditions. And most dangerously of all, they believed every word. The children of chaotic breath are here. He brings his burp master. Such madness. Such gall. Such honor. The words drifted on layered frequencies as Tobias and Jeff Gutshot Malone made their way through the gauntlet of expectation. Tobias adjusted his suit anxiously, now embroidered with golden glyphs hastily designed back on Earth to resemble ancient burp sigils, though in reality they were based loosely on spiraled pasta shapes. Jeff, by contrast, carried himself like a war hero, dressed in a deep navy robe embroidered with the emblem of the Order of Resonance. He cradled a carved ceremonial mug of Solar Surge 9X, ready to unleash fury at a moment's notice. Upon entering the Grand Hall, Tobias was once again greeted by the imposing and inscrutable figure of Archon Dralvor. The Archon had not moved from his pedestal beneath the crystalline throne. His 10 eyes regarded them with what Tobias now recognized was a calculated blend of respect and profound fear. "You have returned," the Archon spoke, his tone slow and deliberate, as though weighing every syllable like a blade poised above a rival's throat. Tobias gave a modest bow, silently praying his translator would convey only the intended humility, rather than accidentally triggering another interstellar incident. "As promised, I return with the Grand Burpmaster of Earth to demonstrate our highest right." There was a pause, an agonizing, silent pause. Finally, the Archon gestured gracefully with a flick of his six-tongued hand. "Proceed." Jeff Malone stepped forward, his game face on. No audience had ever been this alien, no arena this unforgiving. Yet to him, this was no different than Finals night on Battlezone 9, except if he failed, Earth might not exist by sunrise. With practiced precision, he tilted his head back, took a single sip of his volatile beverage, and unleashed what could only be described as a symphony of destructive resonance. It began low and guttural, swelling into rich overtones, modulating expertly across 3 distinct frequencies, and ending with an elegant, fading diminuendo that echoed around the chamber like the closing of a cosmic rift. The hall exploded into stunned reverence. The Archon stood motionless, but his many eyes flickered in patterns that, as Tobias would later learn from cultural analysts, symbolized deep contemplation and, remarkably, awe. "Such recklessness," the Archon murmured. "Such release of self without fear. You're not bound by control. You are masters of vulnerability. This is transcendence." What followed was not merely acceptance, but revelation. Word of the demonstration traveled faster than light. Within hours, the Concord Summit's central data lattice became the most accessed network in galactic history. News feeds across 100 civilizations played and replayed Jeff's resonant belch, analyzing each frequency shift, each subtle variation, as if deciphering a holy scripture. Influential scholars from the Scholarium of Signer declared burping an emergent art form. Religious cults from the mists of Thel announced the coming of the heaving herald. Fashion designers began showcasing robes and sashes decorated with spirals and waveforms inspired by Earth-fabricated burping sigils. In what Earth media soon dubbed the Burp Renaissance, entire alien cultures began redefining their social norms overnight. On Zora Prime, a world once famed for its silent monastic order, initiates now began their meditative rituals by issuing carefully tuned burps in honor of the void. On Selexis 4, business negotiations between rival megacorporations were no longer sealed with digital contracts, but instead with dueling belches broadcast live to billions. By the third galactic day, the practice had evolved beyond what Earth had ever intended. It became more than art. It became power. Galactic leaders, eager to prove themselves on this new playing field, began pushing the limits. Breathing exercises gave way to chemical enhancers. Natural burps were replaced by biomechanical augmentations capable of unleashing seismic waves. Entire industries emerged overnight dedicated to burp amplification technology, BAT. Humanity had sparked what military strategists later described as the most bizarre arms race in history. At first, Earth celebrated. Tobias Vance received dozens of medals and commendations. Jeff Gutshot Malone became an interstellar celebrity, his face projected on moons, his signature captured in digital graffiti across orbital billboards. Burp Strong, Burp Proud became the unofficial slogan of Earth's ambassadorial fleet. However, as the weeks rolled on, the unintended consequences of Burpgate began to reveal themselves. The first major sign came from the Croc's dominion, an aggressive reptilian empire that had long viewed Earth with disdain. In what they declared as the ultimate gesture of respect and intimidation, Croc's generals staged the rite of the Everburp, locking themselves into pressurized chambers and belching continuously for 93 hours straight. The resulting shockwaves destabilized their moon's orbit, triggering catastrophic volcanic upheaval and leading to the collapse of two major city-states. Elsewhere, on the serene crystalline world of Violon, peaceful artisans attempted to match this display by constructing elaborate wind tunnels designed to channel and beautify amplified burps. The experiment ended disastrously when harmonic resonance caused the tunnels to implode, resulting in what planetary officials somberly referred to as the shattering of song. Soon after, galactic Concord channels were flooded with distress calls, burping duels escalating beyond cultural norms, hostilities disguised as honor bouts, worlds destabilized by competitive belching. It had become painfully clear. What humanity had offered as a ruse to avoid extinction had morphed into a weaponized social contagion. Tobias Vance sat alone in his quarters on the human diplomatic cruiser UNS Resolute, staring at the growing mountain of reports. Alien alliances were fracturing. Empires were collapsing into chaos. What began as desperate improvisation now threatened to upend the entire galactic order. Sir, his adjutant, a young diplomat named Rajiv, entered, breaking the silence. They've called for an emergency session. The Galactic Concord wants answers. Tobias rubbed his temples. Answers to what? Rajiv hesitated. To why? Why you unleashed burping diplomacy on the galaxy and destroyed millennia of balance. For the first time, Tobias truly understood the depth of the disaster. They had not merely saved Earth through a clever lie. They had altered galactic civilization itself. Behind him, his comms unit pinged. Dozens of alien factions, once enemies, had unified into a new council. Not out of peace, but out of shared trauma. They called themselves the Coalition Against Human Insolence and Resonant Insult, or simply Kahiri. They're blaming us, aren't they? Tobias asked quietly. Yes, sir, Rajiv confirmed grimly. And they are preparing for something big. Tobias looked out the viewport as hundreds of alien vessels began to gather on the diplomatic network's live feed. We avoided annihilation once. But now, the whole galaxy may decide Earth burped once too often. As the signal cut, and the words motion for punitive action against humanity past flashed across the screen, Tobias muttered only two words. Oh no! The skies above Earth darkened for the first time in centuries. Not from weather, not from cosmic drift, but from a fleet. Kahiri, the coalition against human insolence and resonant insult, had gathered in brutal unity. Across the heavens, armadas drifted in terrifying silence. Ships bigger than continents bristled with weaponry. Some carried sonic disintegrators calibrated to vibrate Earth into dust. Others wielded planet-slicing beams powered by the collapsing songs of dead stars. On every broadcast channel across the galaxy, the declaration had been clear. Humanity has destabilized the balance. They introduced chaos masked as culture. They shall now face judgment. Earth's governments panicked. Defense grids flared online. AI-controlled planetary shields, dormant since the Martian diplomacy crisis of 2294, blinked to life with the grim resignation of veterans waking for one last war. In the command chamber of UNS Resolute, Tobias Vance stood motionless as the chaos unfolded. The live feed showed alien leaders solemnly preparing attack formations. They had seen through the ruse. Worse, they had felt its consequences. The age of burp diplomacy was about to end in flames. Beside him, Jeff Gutshot Malone, still wearing his now tattered burpmaster robes, whispered, This seems bad. Very bad, Tobias replied flatly. Do we burp again? Tobias glared. Jeff, if you burp right now, they'll crack Earth like an egg. Jeff wisely fell silent. Amid the growing despair, Helena Voss, Earth's PR genius turned accidental galactic war criminal, barged into the room. Disheveled, manic-eyed, and surrounded by 5 holographic assistants feverishly running simulations, she looked exactly like someone who had just spent 72 sleepless hours engineering humanity's last bluff. "Tobias," she gasped, "we're doing this all wrong." "Helena, they're literally minutes from firing." "No," she insisted, slamming a holographic schematic onto the table. "That's where they want us to panic. The mistake wasn't the burping. It wasn't. No, it's that we only showed them one human absurdity. They think burping is our ultimate chaos. It isn't?" Tobias asked hesitantly. Helena's eyes gleamed wickedly. "No, Tobias. They haven't seen our true weapon yet." Across the chamber, diplomats, generals, and AI constructs turned as she spoke the forbidden phrase. Interpretative dance diplomacy. The room froze. Even Tobias recoiled. "Helena, no one's done interpretative dance seriously since." "Exactly. Since never. Not really. That's why it's perfect." Her logic, as mad as it sounded, cut deep. The aliens had become obsessed with deciphering human gestures. Burping had driven them mad with attempts to mimic and interpret meaning. But dance? Freeform, abstract, meaningless on purpose? To the hyperliteral galactic species, it would be unknowable. And what cannot be understood is feared. Helena spread her hands dramatically. Burping proved we are fearless. Dancing will prove we are untouchable. They will not risk war against beings who defy logic itself. Tobias blinked slowly. "This is insane." Helena leaned close. "We're humans, Tobias. That's our superpower." Within minutes, the plan was in motion. Earth transmitted an emergency diplomatic signal to Kahiri's War Council. A truce was offered, but only if humanity was permitted to demonstrate its highest cultural ritual of ultimate significance. Reluctantly, driven by curiosity and no small amount of dread, the coalition agreed. At precisely 0000 Galactic Standard Time, Earth's broadcast began. Across every capital and colony in the known galaxy, hundreds of billions watched in stunned confusion as Earth's elite team of cultural champions took the stage. They wore neon-lit suits. They moved without pattern or purpose. They pirouetted, flopped, wiggled, crawled backward on all fours, and performed something suspiciously similar to the worm, followed by a synchronized jazz hands finale. "Behold," announced Earth's voiceover, the dance of infinite meaning. The alien council chambers were thrown into chaos. Across hundreds of species, AI translators failed spectacularly. Ambassadors wept openly trying to parse meaning. The Vorgul delegation began infighting over differing interpretations. On Zythar, an oracle fainted, declaring the dance a message from the dimension of madness. A particularly nervous faction, the insectoid Jurlon, immediately voted to stand down out of fear that Earth's meaningless maneuver rituals might fracture space-time itself. Within minutes, panic spread across the coalition like wildfire. The dance continued, now increasingly erratic, as Earth's team incorporated random human pop culture references, dabbing, flossing, and finally a slow-motion moonwalk performed solemnly while staring directly into the camera. By the time Helena gave the secret signal to stop, the deed was done. Kahiri collapsed. The alien fleets never fired. Instead, one by one, they withdrew. Not in defeat, but in terrorized reverence. News feeds exploded with analysis. The children of chaotic breath, now masters of movement. Their minds are unknowable. Their bodies untethered from logic. Truly, they are beyond war. Within a galactic month, all punitive actions were rescinded. Earth was granted ultra-sovereign cultural status, ensuring no species would ever dare attack or insult them again. Entire religions sprang up devoted to the sacred worm and the eternal spin. The Crocs even mandated daily dance burp salutes to honor human unpredictability. Back on Earth, Tobias Vance stood before the UN Council, hailed as the diplomat who danced humanity out of doom. Jeff Malone became the galaxy's first burp dance fusion superstar, touring alien worlds to sold-out arenas. And Helena Voss? She retired instantly. She had, after all, made humanity the most terrifying civilization in the galaxy, simply by being human. Centuries later, long after Tobias passed into legend, an alien child asked their elder, "Why do we fear Earth?" The elder did not hesitate, because they do not seek logic. They do not fear mockery. They weaponize what others discard. And when cornered, they burp, they dance, and they confuse the stars themselves. The child nodded solemnly. Truly, the most dangerous beings of all. And so, humanity thrived, not as conquerors or warriors, but as the unstoppable avatars of absurdity, forever untouchable, forever chaotic, forever victorious.